What would Earth look like with Saturn's rings? Imagine waking up one morning and looking out of your window to see the sky dominated by brilliant luminous bands stretching across the heavens from horizon to horizon, a sight so breathtaking that it would make our current moon look almost modest. The rings would gleam in shades of silver, gold, and faint rose, reflecting the sunlight in ways that could turn daybreak and twilight into spectacles beyond anything we have ever known. Humanity would no longer look up to an empty dome of blue by day and a quiet field of stars by night. Instead, we would live beneath a constant celestial masterpiece, an unending panorama that would change with every shift of the sun and every phase of light across the sky. From this starting point of wonder, we must now explore the deeper and more complex consequences of such a dramatic transformation. For while the beauty of Saturn's rings transplanted to Earth might inspire awe, their presence would reshape our world in ways both enchanting and dangerous. If Earth somehow acquired rings like Saturn, their scale would be immense. Depending on their composition and orbital radius, they might stretch tens of thousands of kilometers across the sky, creating permanent arcs of light visible from every location on the planet. Unlike the distant spectacle of the moon, these rings would sit close enough that their presence would feel overwhelming, dominating the skyline at all times. At the equator, the view would be most spectacular, with the rings towering overhead in a broad, luminous band slicing the sky in half. Toward the poles, the sight would be different, appearing as long, shimmering streaks that hug the horizon, like glowing walls of light enclosing the world. No human anywhere on Earth would be able to ignore them, and no culture could remain untouched by their presence. The rings would alter our environment in countless subtle and dramatic ways. Sunlight, reflecting off their icy particles, would brighten nights almost to the level of perpetual twilight, reducing the natural darkness upon which many species rely for hunting, breeding, and rest. Nocturnal animals would struggle, as predators and prey alike find their behaviors disrupted by the strange new glow. Migratory birds that navigate by the stars might become confused, their paths bent by the sudden brightness cutting across the heavens. The human experience of night would also change. Imagine cities under skies that never turn fully black, rural landscapes bathed in a ghostly silver glow, and ancient traditions tied to starlight transformed forever by the radiant crown encircling our planet. The cultural implications would be staggering. Since the dawn of time, humanity has gazed upward and woven myths from the moon and the stars. But rings stretching across the heavens would become the central image of every civilization. Ancient peoples might see them as ladders to the gods or celestial bridges uniting the earth with the divine. They would dominate art, poetry, religion, and philosophy, shaping the very way humanity understands its place in the cosmos. Even in the modern age, with scientific explanations available, their sheer magnificence would inspire awe that no rational analysis could diminish. Every sunrise framed by glittering bands, every eclipse shaded through rippling arcs, every festival and ceremony lit beneath their glow would remind us that we live on a world unlike any other. Yet the consequences would not all be beautiful. Rings are not stable forever. Over time, they are shaped by the delicate balance of gravitational forces and the continual bombardment of space debris. On Earth, such rings might produce frequent meteor showers as fragments drift inward and burn up in the atmosphere. While most would be harmless streaks of light, larger chunks could strike the surface, producing devastating impacts. The rings themselves could cast shadows on parts of the planet, subtly altering climate by cooling certain latitudes while others receive additional reflected light. Crops might fail in regions that no longer receive consistent sunlight, while deserts might flourish under new patterns of heat and shade. The very rhythm of seasons could be bent by the rings above. Astronomy, too, would change forever. For modern scientists, the rings would be both a blessing and a curse. They would provide a constant laboratory for studying orbital mechanics, particle physics, and the effects of solar radiation. But they would also obscure our view of the universe. Observatories would struggle to peer through the bright bands, their glow drowning out distant stars and galaxies. The rings would dominate the night sky so completely that the Milky Way might vanish from sight for much of the population. Our understanding of the cosmos might advance more slowly as the grandeur of our immediate sky blinds us to the distant mysteries beyond. Geopolitics could also be reshaped beneath the rings. Nations at the equator, where the view is most spectacular, might turn their landscapes into global centers of tourism, religion, and science. The rings would influence architecture as builders design monuments to frame their glow, or observatories to study their composition. The competition to control resources falling from the rings, such as valuable meteorites, might spark conflicts. Humanity might find itself both united by the shared wonder of the heavens and divided by the opportunities and dangers they present. Beyond the practical consequences, there is the emotional weight of such a sky. Consider the effect of the Apollo missions when photographs of Earth rising above the lunar horizon reshaped our self-image as a fragile blue world, suspended in darkness. Now imagine the shift if every human being could step outside and see the planet wrapped in a crown of silver light every single night. The rings would serve as a constant reminder of cosmic grandeur, forcing us to confront our place in a universe filled with beauty and danger. Perhaps they would humble us, encouraging cooperation in the face of shared wonder. Or perhaps they would remind us of how fragile and temporary such gifts can be, for rings do not last forever, and one day they would drift away or collapse upon the Earth that birthed them. The vision of Earth with Saturn's rings is not only a question of physics or geology, it is a thought experiment that reaches deep into culture, imagination, and identity. It asks how humanity would evolve beneath skies forever transformed, how we would adapt to light without true darkness, how our myths and religions would bend beneath a constant celestial crown, and how our science and politics would shift in response to this new reality. The rings would be more than decoration. They would be an ever-present influence upon the rhythms of life, the cycles of culture, and the dreams of our species. So what would Earth look like with Saturn's rings? It would be breathtaking beyond description, a world unlike any other in the solar system, a planet crowned with arcs of fire and ice that dominate every horizon. But it would also be a world of challenges, a world where beauty comes hand in hand with peril, where light is both gift and curse, and where humanity must redefine itself under skies forever changed. The question lingers long after the thought experiment ends, inviting us to look up at our ordinary moon and our star-filled heavens with renewed appreciation. For perhaps the greatest wonder is not what might have been, but the simple and fragile perfection of the world we already call home. If Earth truly had Saturn's rings, one of the most striking differences would be the way human history might have unfolded under skies forever crowned by shimmering arcs of ice and rock. Ancient civilizations would never have gazed upon a simple blank sky scattered with stars. Instead, their earliest myths would grow beneath a cosmic backdrop that seemed alive with shifting colors and shadows. The Egyptians might have built pyramids not only to align with the stars, but to mirror the majestic sweep of the rings above. The Mayans could have devised calendars tied to the movement of shadows cast by the arcs upon their temples. Every empire would embed the rings into their identity, seeing them as bridges to the gods or eternal rivers of light. Humanity's first question would not be whether the earth is flat or round, but why the heavens wear a crown and who placed it there. Our sense of time itself might change. Imagine how the rings would look during the cycle of a day. At sunrise, they would glow in hues of fire, painted with gold as the sun climbed the horizon. At noon, they would fade into brilliant silver, shimmering faintly as sunlight scattered across their countless particles. At twilight, they would blaze once again, turning crimson and violet, transforming every dusk into a spectacle that would rival the most dramatic auroras. By night, they would loom as pale, luminous bands cutting across the stars, glowing with an eerie silver light that never disappears. Time would not only be measured by shadows on sundials or the motion of stars, but by the changing palette of the rings. Festivals, harvests, and even daily rituals might follow the colors of the heavens rather than the months of a calendar. Human exploration of the cosmos would be altered as well. Galileo's telescope revealed the rings of Saturn in the 17th century, changing forever our understanding of the solar system. But if Earth had its own rings, humanity would have discovered orbital mechanics centuries earlier. Observers would notice the way the arcs cast shadows upon the Earth at certain times of year, and careful records would reveal the laws of motion long before Newton formalized them. Perhaps science and technology would accelerate, driven by curiosity about the vast celestial structure overhead. Or perhaps humanity would remain entranced by the divine beauty of the rings, delaying the rise of scientific rationalism as the arcs became objects of worship rather than study. Practical challenges would arise as well. Satellites could not move freely through skies filled with orbiting debris. Communications and navigation might be far more limited. The space age as we know it could stall, as rockets struggle to launch without colliding with fragments of ice and stone. Our dream of reaching the moon might never occur, or if it did, it would take centuries longer, requiring technology able to pierce the dangerous fields above. Humanity might remain earthbound far longer, focused on the celestial wonder we already possessed, instead of seeking others beyond. The rings would also create a sense of fragility. Every time a fragment fell as a meteor, every time a shadow cut across farmland, every time a fragment of ice burned bright in the atmosphere, humanity would be reminded that the sky itself was unstable. We would live under beauty that could betray us, under a crown of light that might one day collapse upon our world. Perhaps this would make us more cautious, binding cultures together with a shared humility before the heavens. Or perhaps it would breed fear and superstition, a sense that doom is always hanging above. Ultimately, the question of what Earth would look like with Saturn's rings is more than a vision of altered skies. It is a mirror for ourselves. It asks how we adapt to beauty, how we endure under danger, how culture and science are shaped by the heavens we inherit. The rings would be a permanent reminder that our world is not ordinary, that it is part of a universe filled with grandeur and chaos. And yet, perhaps the most profound reflection is this: we do not need Saturn's rings to live on a world of wonder. Already, we have auroras that dance in green curtains, comets that blaze across the sky, eclipses that darken day into night, and stars that whisper across eternity. Earth without rings is still a jewel of the cosmos. The absence of such a crown does not diminish our planet's beauty. It simply means we are free to imagine what might have been. And in that act of imagination, we discover the depth of our own creativity. So when you look up tonight and see the moon hanging silent in a sea of stars, imagine for a moment the heavens ablaze with silver arcs sweeping across the sky. Imagine the stories you might tell, the fears you might feel, the awe that might anchor your soul. And then remember that our plain sky, though bare by comparison, is the canvas upon which every human story has been painted. It may lack rings, but it holds the dreams of countless generations. And perhaps that is the greater wonder, not what could have been, but what already is.